This program is brought to you by the members of WCNY. Thank you.
Connect New York is sponsored by James Jordan Associates Architects, providing professional architectural services to educational, commercial, and institutional clients throughout New York State. James Jordan Associates Architects, with offices in Richfield Springs, New York.
Geddes Federal Savings and Loan offers home loans, IRAs, money market, checking, and savings accounts.
Geddes Federal, how can I help you this morning?
Personal service. Get it at Geddes. Offices in Westvale Plaza and in Manlius.
Welcome to WCNY's live coverage of Syracuse Mayor Ben Walsh's State of the City address, which he is delivering at the City Center in downtown Syracuse. I'm David Lombardo, host of WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and you're watching a special presentation of the mayor's 7th State of the City address. And stick around after the speech for analysis of the remarks with Jeremy Boyer, city reporter for the Syracuse Post-Standard and Syracuse.com, Maurice Brown, an Onondaga County legislator representing Syracuse, and Sharon Owens, deputy mayor for the city of Syracuse. Jeremy, the speech tonight is being held at the City Center, which was also the site of the mayor's, I believe, 2nd State of the City address. What's the significance of this location?
They chose to come back here when they did the speech in 2019. City Center was just in the first phase of a total. It's the former Sibley's department store was empty for years and years, and developer came in to totally renovate it into mixed-use office space. So the first time he was there was when they were just starting it. A theater, the Red House Theater, had opened in there, but he's coming back 5 years later because it's now fully renovated, reopened. 200 plus people are working there, and at the time he announced his economic development plan, which they've dubbed the Syracuse Surge, and feel like they've accomplished a lot to the goals that were laid out in 2000.
It's a victory lap, essentially.
So yeah, and it's he's talked about the kind of the symbolism too of in Syracuse's heyday in the 20s, South Salina Street, where this building is, was the center of everything, and we can it can be that again is sort of the theme of this speech. I think the title is Center of Growth, and the idea of there's a lot of talk about growth in Onondaga County with Micron, especially, and the mayor is saying he wants Syracuse to really be the focal point of where that growth is felt the most.
Maurice, the mayor obviously doesn't operate in a vacuum. As a county legislator, what are you hoping to hear him address in terms of maybe the city's relationship with the county lawmakers, or just its overall place in central New York?
So one of the things that came up a bunch was for city residents was lead remediation and things like that, lead testing. That's something that the county does, but the city and the county are actually doing a better job working together to address it. So if he could highlight that, I think that would be good, just to let folks know that work is being done. But there are a bunch of different things going on. And I'm hoping that he's able to touch on all of them, whether it's the lead, whether it's DSS, etc. But yeah, I don't know. I really don't know exactly what connections he's going to make. I'm hoping he mentions, like I said, the lead, and I'm still going to mention housing because it's such a big deal for me. But yeah, I think we can continue to work better. I think we can work better going on, but I agree with the mayor that the city of Syracuse has to be the center of the progress. I just have never seen it work where you don't have a strong city center, and we need to make sure we have that here, Central New York.
Jeremy, this speech, who is this for? Is it for the people in the room? Is it for the political nerds watching us? Is it for the people who are going to open up the Syracuse Post-Standard tomorrow, or maybe go online to Syracuse.com? Who's the mayor speaking to?
Well, I mean, technically, it's a speech for the Syracuse Common Council.
Well, legally,
that's the reason they do this every year.
The reason for the season.
But and to be blunt, I mean that is a big. Those 9 people, those 9 voting members, and President Helen Hudson they have to work with him. So he wants to let them know where he's coming from.
So Jeremy, as the reporter here, writing about this, what is your lead for the mayor's speech. What should people in the Syracuse area expect to take away from the speech?
I think it's in a lot of ways it's a you know, sort of, I think we talked about it before, it's sort of a partial victory lap of, you know, this is where we were in 2019, this is the goals we had laid out, and we've done a lot to get to that, to get to those goals. That said, we have more to go, and that's kind of, I think the theme of or the choice of the venue and kind of bringing it back to things that were talked about in the past, past State of the City speeches, was kind of felt throughout the speech. He kind of even structured it around, you know, some of the 4 core goals that they had in that speech back in 2019.
Well, Sharon, if you had the privilege of writing for the Syracuse Post-Standard, what would be your story that you'd want readers to take away from this? What do you think the mayor was trying to convey, and do you feel like he did that?
I do. I mean, Jeremy did hit it on the head. I mean, we set out an aggressive agenda in 2018, enrolled it out in 2019. Despite COVID, us all pausing for a moment, we've kept the pedal to the metal. As a person in City Hall working day to day, I absolutely experience it every day. So we haven't let up. We continue to move forward on many of the initiatives they talked about, and there's still more to come in 2 years left.
Well, from tonight's speech then, what sort of embodies that pedal to the metal spirit that you just talked about? What that the mayor wants to do moving forward speaks to that idea of not letting up?
Oh, the commitment to housing in the next 2 years, 2,500 units. By 2025, we're going to get it done.
And what is it, though, about what the mayor's laying out that is going to achieve that? Because down the road in Albany, the governor laid out a plan for developing 800,000 new homes in a decade, and the first year of that was a big flop. So what is it about the mayor's plan that is going to be successful, both in terms of realizing it and then actually seeing those houses built?
Well, the governor is speaking for the entire state. Mayor is speaking for the city of Syracuse. We have already have established partners with housing, whether it's the affordable housing, new development that you heard today.
Right.
People really looking to come together to create this housing that we know we are going to need, not just for people that we're going to welcome into our community, but really addressing the housing that we have now.
Housing is at the core of neighborhood stability. I'm immensely proud of the work already being done by the City Department of Neighborhood and Business Development, or NBD, to improve housing and strengthen our neighborhood business corridors. The Resurgent Neighborhoods Initiative, or R&I, which we introduced in 2020, gave us a head start on responding to the growing demand for quality housing. The R&I infill housing strategy set an audacious goal to construct 200 new units of affordable single and two-family homes on scattered sites throughout the city. And I'm pleased to report that half of those units are already built or underway. Tonight, I'm excited to announce that with our partners at Home Headquarters, we will start work on 40 more homes in 2024. Housing visions will also be underway with Creekside Landing, which will add more than 50 new housing units, 20 on West Onondaga Street with Jubilee Homes, and 16 two-family homes throughout the south and west sides. NBD is working with other partners on big projects to bring hundreds of new rental units online beginning in 2025. At the former Syracuse Developmental Center, demolition starts this year to make way for more than 500 units of mixed-income housing. At the long vacant Maria Regina campus on Court Street, the financing is lined up to create around 180 units of badly needed affordable senior housing on the north side. The East Adams project, this multi-phase plan will include a one-to-one replacement of all Syracuse Housing Authority public housing units in that neighborhood. That totals 1,400 units of new housing on the south side. At Eastwood Heights, SHA will be getting started later this year with a full rehabilitation of more than 50 affordable senior apartments. Moyer Carriage Lofts by Housing Visions and Redev CNY in the old Penfield building on the north side is completing 128 affordable units, including housing for vulnerable residents. And the deplorable rental units at Vincent Apartments are now finally prepared for redevelopment, with the Skyline Apartments scheduled soon to follow. We expect that will bring about 600 units of workforce housing back online, and there's more in the pipeline. Syracuse will have 2,500 new units of quality housing completed or underway before I leave office at the end of 2025. NBD has many housing priorities, but there is none greater than protecting children and family from lead poisoning. 2023 was the first full year of implementation of the city's new lead ordinance, developed in close coordination with the council. The results are encouraging. Since implementing the program, code enforcement inspectors have issued lead paint violations at nearly 2,200 properties. In almost half of those cases, the landlords have already addressed the condition. For the rest, the city will ensure the work gets done. We could not do this work without the strong support of the Common Council and Onondaga County. There are thousands more properties that still need lead hazard mitigation, so your continued support and collaboration will be critical. In addition to lead paint risk, the city water department is replacing more lead services that bring water to homes than ever before. It expects to complete another 2,100 in the next 2 years. Earlier this year, we completed the Syracuse housing study, one of the most in-depth housing analysis ever done by a city. The study finds the city is burdened with two separate but related problems. We have both a market gap and an affordability gap. The market gap is the difference between what it costs to create and maintain housing and the market's willingness to pay for it. The affordability gap is the difference between what it costs to create and maintain housing and the market's ability to pay for it. Because of these interconnected constraints, there's hardly a block in Syracuse that doesn't have a house that's been deprived of proper care. Most of the time, it's many houses, block after block, that badly need attention. But the cost of upgrading the properties exceeds what the market is willing or able to pay. The cost of solving these problems is as much as $1.5 billion, and that far exceeds our available resources. Working with the council, we've taken a critical first step with the formation of the Syracuse Housing Trust Fund. It will give us more tools and financial capacity to construct, renovate, repair, and rehabilitate housing in the city. We are now underway with a Syracuse housing strategy, which will provide a roadmap for how to address the issues raised in the study in the coming years. The city of Syracuse is, of course, also working with New York State on another transformative initiative for the region, the Community Grid Project. Construction on this massive project started this past year, and despite litigation still trying to stop it, we will see significant work move into the city later this year. It is a full-throated endorsement. Next month, we will release the city's Community Grid Vision Plan. It is a full-throated endorsement of the community grid and shows how Syracuse can maximize this once-in-a-generation opportunity. A multi-decade vision plan, it looks at how we can enhance the street network today and how city neighborhoods can evolve in the future. The North Star of the vision plan is people, not cars. That means it puts the highest priority on pedestrians, bicycles, affordable housing, safe intersections, and sidewalks. Once the viaduct is gone, it envisions a vibrant and walkable Almond Street lined with mixed-use buildings, including multi-story towers that Syracuse hasn't seen built in many decades. This kind of growth isn't a future fantasy. It's starting right now. Tonight, I'm excited to tell you the first major mixed-use development designed for a post-viaduct Almond Street is being proposed. A developer with a strong track record of success in the city intends to build a 14-story high-rise apartment building on the northeast corner of East Fayette and Almond with quality housing for people with a wide range of incomes. The plan includes 300 units of housing with first-floor commercial space. The project is just beginning the local review process, but it's a clear indication of the potential of the community grid already coming to fruition. This project will be mixed income thanks to the new Syracuse zoning requirement that mandates residential development of 20 or more units must offer a minimum of 10% and up to 12% affordable housing. This requirement was a major component of Rezone Syracuse. Councilors, I thank you for approving the new zoning ordinance and map last year. It was a long journey, but we got it done. Thank you.
Maurice, housing was one of the areas that you were hoping to hear from the mayor, as well as you wanted to hear more on transportation. Thinking about those two issues, as well as just generally what's on the mind of Syracuse residents, did this speech reflect both the opportunities and challenges facing people in Syracuse?
Yeah, actually. So like you said, I was critical, and I was hoping that he would mention, housing a lot, and he did. I was keeping count. I stopped at 5, but housing was mentioned a lot, and that means a lot to me because I think that's such a big issue in our community, and I think we have to address it to scale, and he's making an attempt at that. Still skeptical because of who I am by nature, but it is good to, hear the attempt is being made and highlighting things that are in progress, because I didn't even know about some of these things, so that was good. As far as transportation, bus rapid transit, I believe was mentioned.
Yeah, 2026 he's looking to have that rolled out, right, Sharon?
Yes, through Central. I'll work with Central.
Yes, and that was exciting to see it, but I would like more. I would like to see bus rapid transit free when it launches. So I want to take that next step, and I want to work with him to do that. And I really do appreciate that he mentioned the community grid. I think for so long we were stuck on the decision and just whether it, whatever. But now we're at that next step. And what is the community grid gonna look like? Is it gonna be walkable? Will there be bike lanes? Things of that nature. So I'm glad he, took a big leap into that, because I don't know if we've had that conversation publicly at the scale we need to have it. So that was exciting. That was good.
Well, Sharon, in the context of the community grid, the mayor talked about the idea of safety, both for pedestrians as well as automobiles. And last year, the governor, showing off where my interests are, the mayor talked about the Vision Zero plan and the idea of promoting safety. Yeah. Has a lot been done on that in 2023? Has he encountered a lot of roadblocks? And if so, is there reason to think that in 2024 they'll be able to make more progress on that issue?
So for, particularly for the community grid, the owner of that project obviously is the New York Department of Transportation. So we have been on a monthly conversation with them to make sure that as they're looking at how they're going to develop the project, that we're inserting ourselves. Joe Driscoll is our lead staff person on that, inserting ourselves in those conversations around how walkable spaces are going to be, understanding that walkability on the southern end of the community grid isn't necessarily the same as walkability on the northern end of the community grid. So ensuring that DOT is seeing us, hearing us say what the different fabrics along that corridor, which kind of shift in multiple places from the highly residential area in the south side to the more business oriented as you get northern until you get to Hawley Green and that connectivity with 690. So they have been responsive to us. We keep pushing the needle. We're going to have our launching of the vision document very soon, and we're looking forward to the public having an open conversation about that.
So, Jeremy, with these types of speeches, one of the things I'm listening for are these kitchen table issues, things that people are probably actually talking about at their homes, the things that they're concerned about. And one of the things that the past have come up is the idea of sidewalks. And I'm curious what sounds like a kitchen table issue from this speech. Did anything stand out to you?
There's quite a few. I mean, I think anytime you talk about codes and cracking down on bad landlords or illegal businesses, that resonates with people, because that affects everyone, in their day-to-day life, in their neighborhoods, in their, when they walk the streets to go to work. A big one in this city, and Sharon knows it all too well, is everyone loves to discuss the trash carts, and so the mayor didn't shy away from it, and certainly, highlighted the positive things that have come out of that, and said we're going to move forward with recycling. So details will be interesting for that, because that the council has come along, but they've definitely and to their credit, they're listening to their constituents and bringing that feedback back, and it's this give and take that kind of happened with the trash carts. I imagine we'll see some of that as recycling gets rolled out, some of the details of how that'll work. But those are, as you say, kitchen table issues. It's, it's not gonna, people pay attention to how their garbage and their recycling gets picked up, and the mayor definitely wants to make sure he lets people know that these are things we care about and we want to hear from you and we want to continue to work on.
Last year, we successfully introduced semi-automated trash pickup with wheeled covered trash carts citywide. It's the biggest operational change city government has taken on in decades, and it is working extraordinarily well. Injuries to sanitation workers are down dramatically. With the support from the Bureau of Administrative Adjudication, more than 99% of setouts are complying with our trash requirements. Service to residents is improved, and we're already seeing less trash and litter on the streets. These guys don't mind, trust me. Tonight, I have some new data to report. Last year, we saved about $100,000 on landfill fees because of reduced volume, and that's only for part of the year. Now, as the council is painfully aware, it wasn't always easy. We got some pretty harsh feedback on social media, and I even received a few of those mean tweets, I think the kids call them. Here's one. Whoever decided this was a good idea and mandated it should be fired. This guy. More PR fluff for the mayor. Fluff, waste of money. Ouch. Change is always hard, and when you're impacting more than 33,000 properties, you are bound to get a few mean tweets. But our team did an outstanding job implementing this massive change, as evidenced in part by tweets like these. It's about time. Smiley face emoji. And the new trash carts are great. Bring on recycling. On that front, I have good news. We plan to introduce semi-automated recycling pickup in 2024.
Well, Sharon, one of the issues the mayor clearly didn't plan on speaking about tonight was the Middle East, and a few hecklers brought up the issue of Palestinian deaths following the Israeli response, following Hamas terrorist attacks.
Tens of thousands. How many more have to die before the city?
Yeah. The death of all people, all innocent people, is completely unacceptable, including in Palestine and Israel. My heart breaks for them.
I'm not going to ask you to weigh in on, Middle East policy, but right now. But do you think that is something that the mayor should be talking about in the future? Is there a role for the city of Syracuse on national or international affairs?
I believe that the mayor has to be an ear to the constituents of his city, regardless of what side they may be on. The side we all need to be on is the side of humanity. People are dying no matter who you support and which side you're on. These are all human beings who are being murdered or tortured in this horrible war. And so as the mayor, the position of the mayor should be to have an open ear to the individuals and have influence where he can with whether it's state or federal or international officials, where he can. But his responsibility as the mayor is to have an ear for the people and the stakeholders here in the city.
Maurice, an issue that people are talking about around the state, whether it's impacting their lives or not, because it's part of the national and state news cycle, is the influx of asylum seekers to New York. We didn't really hear much, if anything, from the mayor about that. Is that a missed opportunity? Should the mayor have weighed in on that issue?
Yeah, actually, that was good that you pointed out because I didn't even realize it. But yes, that is such a big issue. It's funny because so I think that, America, melting pot. I think that that's how our nation was founded. Like that is what makes us strong. At the same time, I think that there's a real opportunity here. There's a lot of jobs that, they say no one wants to work anymore. These people, if we bring in a bunch of new people, maybe we can find some employees. I think we are looking at the whole conversation backwards. It's not a deficit. It's not, a problem to be solved. It's an opportunity. We can really bolster our workforce. We can bolster, our education. We can really grow our community in a way that I think we should be excited about.
Well, Sharon, was that a conscious choice from the mayor to not address that, or was it an omission? How should we think about the lack of the focus on the asylum seekers? Is it not an issue for Syracuse right now?
Well, it's an issue for all of us. There are people who are in war-torn and areas in our world, particularly our southern borders, who are trying to run away from oppression, and they find that in the United States, and they find it first of all across the border, and then people are being brought to up to New York, in particular New York City, and I know there's been a debate back and forth. I think what is important about asylum seekers is that there's a strategy, because what we don't want are people just dropped off on a bus, at a hotel, or somewhere, or on the street, with no plan for how we're going to, it's not enough just for someone to have a shelter or a room to be in. There has to be a plan for their prosperity. If there's a path for work opportunities, that should be laid out and very strategic. And so we are always open for discussions, but it needs to be strategic. It is heart-wrenching to see families unloading on buses, no idea where they're going, no idea how they're going to sustain their families, kids going to schools who don't even speak the language at those schools, and no real plan for them because they were used as political pawns.
Well, Jeremy, we're going to have to call it a night in a few seconds, but I'm curious, is this an agenda that we just heard that the Common Council is going to embrace, or are there some potential landmines potentially, or warm hugs and kisses throughout 2024?
Well, it'll be interesting to see, they've already, they've signed off on the Housing Trust Fund.
Mm-hmm.
They've signed off on some other big initiatives like Safer Streets. And as these programs start to be implemented, I'll be interested to see what kind of results there are, and if council says, hey, that's not what we thought, we expected this to go better, or we expected this to go differently. So it'll be interesting to sort of see some of the rollout of some of these programs and where it goes from there.
Stay tuned, so to speak.
Yep.
But unfortunately, we're going to have to call it for tonight, and I want to thank my guests, Deputy Mayor Sharon Owens, County Legislator Maurice Brown, and reporter Jeremy Boyer. If you want to revisit any of tonight's special Connect New York coverage, visit WCNY.org. And if you haven't gotten enough of me, tune in to WCNY on January 29th at 9 p.m. for Connect New York, when we'll break down the governor's budget and her State of the State address. From everyone behind the scenes, I'm David Lombardo. Have a great night.